All right, Vice Mayor, we are now live.
She had bus problems and she's logging on right now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Vice Mayor Kilgore, Chair of the Board and Commissions Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to the April 9th, 2024 remote meeting. All council committee members and staff are participating virtually. And to help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. And we are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. And for those of you out there with us today, we'd like to welcome you. And for today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9478. Your speaker will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, the speakers will need to push *3 to enter into the speaking queue. And at this time, I would like to go through and do a roll call and introduce all council and committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Councilwomen, council members and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Antoinette Mosley.
Good afternoon.
Councilwoman Kim Rooney.
Good afternoon.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Hello and good afternoon.
A Deputy City Clerk Sarah Gross.
Hello.
Assistant City Clerk Jerry Goldberg.
Good afternoon.
And we also have a guest presenter today who I will ask to introduce themselves before their presentation. And at this time, I would like to get a motion for the March minutes.
So moved. Second.
Great, so we have a motion and a second. At this time, I'd like to do a roll call. Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
Councilwoman Kim Rooney.
Aye.
And myself, aye, and motion passes. Okay, next I'd like to check, Sarah, do we have anyone in the speaker queue this morning?
We do not have anyone in the queue right now.
Okay, great. So now we will move on to new business on the agenda. And our first item of business is an update and presentation about the report in issue form on our city website. That will be done by Mr. Patrick Tunnett. And at this time, Patrick, you want to introduce yourself and sort of give us an update? It would be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Can everyone see the presentation I'm sharing? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Members of the Asheville Boards and Commissions Committee, city staff, and everyone watching this meeting virtually. My name is Patrick Conan, and I'm here today to talk about a successful collaboration between Sunshine Labs, Code with Asheville, and the City of Asheville to identify and resolve issues with public participation in meetings. Public meetings are one of the most important ways that residents can participate in the work of local government. The city dedicates significant staff and infrastructure resources to provide various options for the public to learn and participate in public meetings. However, sometimes things don't go as planned. Website links break, the live comment line goes down. Up to this point, there hasn't been a clear way for members of the public who experience issues to provide a report to staff. Through the work of Sunshine Labs and Code with Asheville, we've actually thought quite a bit about how to make public meetings more accessible. Since these efforts led directly to the collaboration I'm sharing today, I'm going to give you a quick origin story. In 2022, we gathered feedback from individuals and groups in our community and proposed a community-driven policy proposal called the Open Meetings Policy. The Open Meetings Policy starts with a simple but important vision. Local government should commit to take all reasonable measures to increase public participation and eliminate barriers to access for all members of our community. The open meetings policy includes 3 core concepts, but I'm going to highlight the second: removing barriers to participation before, during, and after meetings. In our policy and process recommendations, we specifically highlighted the need for a process to identify and resolve issues that occur during public participation. We created a policy template for consideration by local government bodies like the City of Asheville. We requested feedback and received endorsements from 214 individuals and 23 organizations. We received the opportunity to present the open meetings policy to the City of Asheville Governance Committee on June 14th, 2022. We asked the committee to support our request to move the policy forward to full City Council. While we received a motion to support our request, it did not succeed. So we took a step back and considered alternate paths forward. We still believe strongly in the need for more accessible public meetings, so we started to think through ways we could support incremental steps to improve the process. We settled on a pretty simple idea: a form to allow members of the public to report when they experience issues participating in public meetings. We initially envisioned this as a community-driven project. A team of volunteers would review form submissions and then send them to the appropriate member of city staff and report back to the resident who submitted the issue. This would provide 2 important benefits. First, it would provide a single place for residents to report issues with participation in any public meeting. Second, it would provide the public with a valuable resource to analyze commonly reported issues, allowing us to identify system-wide process or policy changes that could improve our public meetings. However, that approach didn't feel quite right. We knew it would be better if we could have a deeper collaboration with city staff. With assistance from IT, we reached out to the city's clerk's office and met with staff on May 8th, 2023. We were thrilled to learn that city staff were enthusiastic about our project. They saw how it solved an important need for residents and streamlined what was currently an informal and disjointed process for staff. Staff thought about the concept a bit more and suggested a shift in approach. Why doesn't the city just host the form and route submissions directly to the staff members tasked with coordinating the city's response to these kinds of reports? As a community member, I had a few concerns. How would the public have confidence that their submissions were received, acknowledged, and acted upon? We don't want these submissions to go into a black hole or an endless backlog of issues. Also, how could community groups retain the ability to monitor form submissions to identify common issues? We put our heads together and quickly came up with a solution. The form itself would be managed by the city, but they would publish a public spreadsheet of responses with personal information such as name and email address removed. This transparency-forward approach allows the city to manage the form and reports, creates accountability to ensure issues are addressed, and proactively provides the public access to critical data on reported issues. Here's how the process works. First, you can find the form on several places on the city website. On this slide, I'm highlighting how you can find the form on the City Council agenda, the Boards and Commissions page, and the pages for each individual board. The rollout has occurred incrementally, but staff have worked diligently to ensure the form is available in the most critical locations. Once you click the link, you wind up on a Google form that looks like this. We ask for the resident's name and email so staff can follow up with them if necessary. We ask for the name and date of the meeting they attended, and we ask if it was virtual or in person. We then ask them to categorize their issue into one of a list of broad categories. Then there's a full text area where they can provide a full write-up of their concerns. Once staff have performed an initial review to prevent spam or unintentional disclosure of private information, the submission will be available on the public spreadsheet. Name and email are removed, but the rest of their submission can be seen by any member of the public. Staff are also able to indicate their response to a particular issue. The form has received 18 submissions since its initial launch across a variety of council committees and advisory boards. People have reported issues including requests for meeting materials, including specific requests for Spanish agendas, audio or visual issues with live streams on YouTube, and issues experienced making public comment via the call-in number. I want to highlight in particular the way staff are providing a response to the reports they receive, including outlining steps taken to resolve the issue. In some cases, staff have indicated that a report has allowed them to investigate and permanently resolve issues with public input or other tech tools. Some key takeaways from this effort: our city now has an accessible form to report issues with public meetings. The form and the workflow the form powers was built collaboratively with input from both city staff and community members at Code with Asheville. Staff receive the form responses directly and take action to resolve issues. Members of the public maintain the ability to view these reports. Individuals and groups can utilize this information to advocate for process or policy changes that would address common challenges. Finally, this effort provides a great example of how collaborative efforts produce better results. The city built this tool with, not for, our community, and we wound up with a well thought out system that addresses the needs of both city staff and the general public. It's important that we acknowledge our wins, but as I mentioned at the start, this was an incremental step forward. I'd encourage the city to consider additional opportunities to make it easier for the public to access and participate in our public meetings. However, I did want to bring this back to a topic that directly concerns the work of this committee. While city staff across many departments are tasked with improving public engagement, our city still lacks a clear policy document that directs staff to take more significant steps to improve access to public meetings. I've heard directly from staff that they are excited about doing this kind of work. They feel supporting the public's access to meetings is part of their core values. I believe that staff would benefit from explicit direction from council to do even more to identify and remove barriers to access. If this committee is interested in exploring this topic further, I'd encourage you to check out our policy template at openmediumspolicy.com. I'm happy to respond to any questions from this committee, but first, I'd like to acknowledge the long list of folks that have contributed to this effort. From the city, Sarah Gross, Chrissy Edwards, Dan Ferris, Scott Barnwell, and all the board and commission liaisons. I'd also like to thank my teammate Holden Mesk from Sunshine Labs and everyone from Code with Asheville, particularly Alex Perry, Jay Hill, Kit Molina Nauert, Colin Alford, and Nicole Lopez. Thank you. And that's the end of my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for that. And I greatly appreciate it. I'm quite sure this will definitely help, improve the communications between the community and city staff and council. Only question I had was when you basically were listing some of the things that you wanted to put in place. I know you said for participants to be able to participate before, after, and during the meeting. My concern is I'm just concerned about the during the meeting part and how that will actually impact our duties and what we're doing as far as the organization and how we sort of present information. I'm sort of concerned that may get a little cumbersome and the meetings may actually sort of get out of hand where we sort of don't really, our meetings are there to sort of, sort of give presentation of what we're doing, what the city's doing, and this type of thing. And I think by having those comments during the meeting could sort of keep it a little bit off kilter or something. I'm just sort of wondering.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would clarify, when we talk about participation during the meetings, from the perspective of the open meetings policy, we're really talking mostly about public comment. Just making sure that people have a variety of options to participate in public meetings, whether they're able to attend in person or whether they're calling in and making a virtual comment. When we talk about participating before or after the meeting, basically, I think it's really hard to weigh in on the work of local government if you don't know what's being discussed. So things like making meeting materials available in advance, making sure they're available in multiple languages and in a machine readable format for people that use screen readers. And after a meeting just means like any decisions that are made, and everything that was discussed at the meeting should also be accessible to the public. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about before, during, and after the meeting.
Okay, so I'm still sort of confused with I got the before and after, and I got the, but the during part is, so, that's where I sort of, it's a little confused about. How does that work? So we're discussing something and someone calls in, and so we have to sort of, just take their comment then, which sort of, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I would say in my mind, I think what we're talking about is just improving the existing process for public comment. So people are still participating during defined periods at the start or end of a meeting. We just want to make sure that people can do that through a variety of mechanisms. So even if a meeting's in person, I think it would be great if people could call in and make a public comment. So even if they can't be there, they can make their voice heard.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
Kim here. I just had an example and I guess a question, but it kind of ties in with what you were saying, Sandra. One of the things that I notice as a liaison to multiple advisory boards is the inconsistency. So you'll have one group, let me think of an example, like the transit committee, you can email comments in, and then you have another group that can, like the Urban Forestry Commission, accept phone calls, and then another group that can't accept phone calls, but will read emails that were submitted in advance. Because it's so inconsistent, it's hard for people to know how to participate. And so then what happens, from what I'm seeing, is that instead of hearing from the public about the issue, we're hearing about the process. And it's because it's confusing or documents weren't available in time for us to review. That when we have documents available 48 to 72 hours in advance in a consistent place where we know to access them, so they're available for low or no vision readers, for people who have lower no vision or blind, and that are translatable, then everyone's able to kind of consistently know where to get the information. Then we can talk about the issues we're dealing with. And sometimes it's, something, like a human rights issue or a housing issue or a policy issue. But if folks immediately get frustrated with not knowing how to participate or where to find information, that's when we're going to run into the process concerns. And I spent a lot of time throughout the week hand-holding for members of the public that are like, I want to participate in this meeting. How do I make my voice heard? And I think that's where I'm really appreciative of the open meetings policy and our staff working at this level and that collaborative, like public-private partnership, because we're able to see the inside and out. Sometimes for myself, I'll be looking at the city council documents so much from the back end that I've kind of forgotten what it looks like to try to access that information as a member of the public. So this is where I think the partnership is so helpful. And one of the steps that I think that we could take as a board and commission committee is to look at the open meetings policy and how it could improve our participation for our advisory boards and its members, which would be such a big help to us. If, for example, the transit committee members, I've been going through with the chair and saying, do the new members of the transit committee know how to look up the data on how the bus system has been running? Because otherwise they're going to be giving their personal accounts, but maybe not speaking to the data for the system as a whole. And even though it's in the attached documents, maybe everybody doesn't know how to access it. So if we could take the time in a meeting to look at how that information is available, it's an asset for the staff to see if there's flaws in the process. It's an asset for the advisory board members because then everybody can work from the same page. But it's also a huge asset for the public who maybe feels like their comments aren't being heard. They just didn't know where to find that they are being documented. So it's a way to celebrate our wins too. But I certainly would love to look at the open meetings policy and kind of match it up with where our advisory board like restructure or review processes and see if we can link up some of those process issues with solutions and develop, kind of like with this, an inside-outside strategy for success.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. And just to respond briefly, I do think consistency is really important. It takes quite a bit of effort for members of the public to participate in the work of our city. And we should celebrate that people are interested in participating. It's one of the great assets of our city. But having different ways to participate at different meetings just makes the process more complicated and confusing, because I know from my own personal experience that if you're able to participate one way at one board, you would expect it to be the same everywhere else. And for different reasons, that's not always the case. So establishing consistency would help. And I think this project I presented on today is a great example of how consistency makes things easier. We use the same length, the same form to report an issue with any public meeting, and we've seen it utilized across a variety of council committees and advisory boards already. So I think this is a good example of how greater consistency would improve the accessibility of our public meetings.
Yes, of course, of course. I'm totally agreement with you on that. Okay, so do we have any?
I guess the last thing I would ask is if we were to ask for the Sunshine Labs to maybe pick like a top 3 or top 5 things that maybe synced up with what we're getting from the advisory board's process. Is that something we could maybe ask to kind of come together, and how much time would that take?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be more than happy to do that, to kind of prioritize and emphasize certain aspects of the open meetings policy that are would be easy to implement for the city. And I would, it's worth acknowledging that, yes, there is a boards and commissions realignment group that I'm a member of that's working to develop recommendations to strengthen our boards and committee structure. And also the city is already moving forward with plans to upgrade the equipment at some of the city meeting spaces to make hybrid meetings possible. So it feels like in a lot of ways we're moving in this direction already, but I would be happy to come back with some specific recommendations so that we could do even more to make it easier to participate in public meetings.
So Vice Mayor Kilgore, if it sounds good to you, when we look at future agendas, where the realignment and some of these recommendations might come together. I'm just thinking if only look at the problems we would miss the opportunity to look at the solutions. One might be if advisory boards feel like when they make recommendations, they don't go anywhere. And if it lines up with this conversation about what happens after the meeting, then we might see a hand-in-hand problem and a solution at the same time. It would make it easier for us to make a recommendation to council and kind of streamline our own process.
Of course. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Kim. I think that's something that we definitely could work towards that would improve the system. So with that being said, Patrick, I guess you could sort of put something else together and maybe we could actually have another presentation, Patrick.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Thank you so much.
Yes, because I must say that the consistency part is definitely something we need across the board, and that alone would strengthen the whole way that we communicate.
And I think measures like that, it helps staff out, it helps the public out, it helps the boards themselves out. It's a win all around.
Yes, for sure. I greatly appreciate it. So does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. And now we'll move on to the second item on the new business is the board appointments. The resource will be Jerry Goldberg, who's the assistant city clerk, and she'll do a review of the boards and commissions applications and recommendations for the city council.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Kilgore. And I just want to point out at the beginning that any recommendations that are coming from this council committee will be brought forth on the May 14th full council committee meeting, since there is no council meeting this evening. And the first board up is the African American Heritage Commission. There are 2 vacancies. The chair has made the recommendation of 1, and that is for the appointment of Alfred Green. So, so we open it up for any questions, discussion, or motions.
Council members, do we have any suggestions or discussion? I definitely would, I know the chair recommended the appointment of Alfred Green, and I've actually got to work with him. I think he would be a great addition to that commission. So
If you're in pursuit of a motion, I can move to recommend Alfred Green.
thank you. I get a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now I'll do a roll call. Councilwoman Mooney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley,
No.
myself, aye. Motion passes. Alfred Green will be appointed, will be passed on to the full council for reconsideration.
And was there any, well, I guess so that's the only recommendation then at this point. So the other one we will re-advertise for, or I guess we'll have to wait till May 14th to know what we're advertising, but okay. Community Reparations Commission is next. There is one vacancy. The staff recommends the appointment of alternate member Tiffany DeBellet, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Tiffany has been serving as an alternate. So they are recommending Tiffany move into the regular meeting member position, and they are not recommending replacing the alternate because the process is so far along at this point.
Do I have any comments? Well, if I have no comments, I'm in total agreement with staff on actually recommending the appointment of the alternate Tiffany DeBella. And also I'm in agreement with staff should not be replacing the alternate member at this time because we are too far in the process. So I'd like to make a motion that we
I'll second.
thank you. At this time, I'd like to do a roll call. Councilwoman Mooney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley,
Sorry, aye.
and myself, motion passes. So,
And I may be incorrect, but I'll take a moment of privilege to say I think that it's Tiffany DeBello.
DeBello. Okay, thank you. Okay, appreciate that too.
And just to confirm, Councilwoman Mosley, you seconded that, correct?
I did.
Okay, thank you. I looked down on my paper and I heard it, but I didn't see it. Human Relations Commission, there are actually 5 vacancies currently. The board chair is recommending the appointment of Carl Falconer, and there were no recommendations for the remaining 4 vacancies. And
So, Councilwoman Mooney.
Okay, so I sent an email because maybe it's because of our new process and I'm just getting used to it. But maybe you can help me understand a couple of things. Normally, when we have folks who are eligible for reappointment and they're interested, it would say that in our documents. And so I was having a little bit of hard time with the new software of realizing the email I got this morning said that 3 of the applicants are eligible and interested. Am I missing something? Can you help me look at this?
there should have been in with the documents, and I don't have it open right now, the actual list that says April 9th, 2024 appointments, and it lists each one, and their Human Relations Commission, Harvey Dean Harold, Dwayna Smith, and Alma Atkins, eligible and interested. Was that not included in your documents? It would have been separate.
It's possible that it would have. I just went through all the documents that I had and got a little turned around. So thank you for helping me understand that.
It is separate. It is separate from the applications and the member and demo information, but it should have been at least in the meeting materials, just as it always had been. It's just as B and C appointments.
I see it now.
Them.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I see. I have it pulled up now.
New process.
So that's it. I had another question that I sent an email to, and thank you, Sarah, for throwing the ball over to Maggie, who tossed it back at me. My understanding was that Carl Falconer might not live in the city limits and might not be eligible for the APCA appointment. And it's my understanding that we've confirmed that he is not eligible or isn't in the city limits. So
No,
Those are two different things. Is he not in the city limits, or do we have something in the statute that says it has to be someone in the city limits?
so, yes, when the membership was reduced during the last, whenever that was, at that time, they changed the requirements, allowing up to 3 members within Buncombe County, but outside city limits. We do not have any currently. So Carl Falconer would therefore be eligible for consideration of one of those 3 county residents.
so he is in the county.
Yes, he was, I believe, Weaver. I don't want to talk off the top of my head, but yeah,
Looking at the
yes,
tax records.
it was in Buncombe County.
I should have clarified that. My understanding was that he might not be in Buncombe County. So thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
Okay. So if we do not have any more questions, I'd like to make a motion, or would someone else like to make a motion?
So can we make the motion in stages? Because it looks like we have 3 who are eligible and interested. One recommendation, which means we'll have to add 1.
Yes.
So I'll
Yeah.
make a broad
Yeah,
motion.
the broad motion with all of them, is that what you're gonna do?
Well, I can do 3 because I'll tell you.
Okay, so,
I'll do 2.
okay,
So I'll make one motion to reappoint all of those listed who are eligible
yes,
and interested. So
Yes.
that would be Harvey Dean Harold, Nwena Smith, Alma Atkins.
yes. Okay. That's fine.
Did someone second?
Councilwoman Roney, you're muted.
Happy to second Harvey and Wayna and Alma.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. At this time, we'll do a roll call. Councilwoman Rooney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So motion passes. Will be passed on to the full council for consideration. Okay, now we have the appointment of Carl Falcone.
So I'm happy to make the motion to appoint Carl Falconer.
Okay. Sandra, I'll second. Okay, so let's do roll call. Councilwoman Rooney,
No.
Councilwoman Mosley,
Aye.
and myself, aye. The motion passes. And
My understanding is we might have another opening then, because we had 2
Yes.
new
Yeah.
vacancies.
So I had, but you go first.
Well, looking through and considering, I was looking at geographic representation, the different concerns that have come up in HRCA recently. And we don't necessarily have someone who's looking at food systems. And because of her experience in working on public policy, I moved to recommend Bethany Vance.
And she's also a Tar Heel, so I'll happily second.
that's fine. So now have a motion and a second. Do roll call. Councilwoman Rooney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And just to recap before I move on to make sure I've got this correctly, the 3 reappointments of all those interested, moved by Councilwoman Mosley, seconded by Councilwoman Roney, and unanimous. The move for Carl by Councilwoman Mosley, seconded by Vice Mayor Kilgore, passed with a no vote from Councilwoman Roney. And then the recommendation of Bethany Vance, made by Councilwoman Roney, seconded by Councilwoman Mosley, and unanimous. Did I capture that? Thank you. You're just saving me from having to go through. Okay, Neighborhood Advisory Committee. There is 1 vacancy for the restaurant. I'm sorry, for the 28801 area, and there was there was 1 recommendation by the board chair of Charles Crowell.
Okay, Councilwoman Mosley, you want to make a comment?
Can you tell me when that recommendation was made? We just had a board meeting yesterday and they were in discussion about changing a few things as far as the board makeup goes. And I couldn't see when that recommendation was made.
I am checking. right now. Sarah, if you know.
All right, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm looking at noise advisory and not neighborhood.
Okay.
I take all
I
of
was
it.
saying, if it was neighborhood advisory committee, I was in that meeting and I don't remember.
Okay.
So we have been looking for a 28801 appointment for some time, and I'm grateful that Charles is available and willing. So I move to recommend Charles Crowell.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. This time we'll do a roll call. Councilwoman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Bozeman,
Aye.
and myself, aye, and so motion passes.
All right. The next one and the last appointment for consideration is to the Noise Advisory Board for a restaurant industry representative, and there was no recommendation received.
So going back to what I was saying before, I was hoping my colleagues would agree to postpone this particular appointment because in the Noise Advisory Board meeting yesterday, there was discussion about perhaps expanding the board, and they want a little time to speak with the clerk's office and the city attorney's office. So it might result in some shuffling of current members into other roles, maybe adding, they just don't know yet. But again, this meeting just took place yesterday afternoon.
Thank you for filling us in on that detail. I'm happy to support that request.
That's fine.
So the directive is not to re-advertise or anything, just to postpone and hold.
Are we going to, so we're not going to re-advertise it?
Well, it's fine to re-advertise.
Yeah, so we could still re-advertise.
So we do re-advertise. Okay. All right. That is the end of the board appointments.
Okay. So we have no unfinished business, and we'll move on to the informal discussion.
We did miss one business item, and that is the proposed amendments to the Design Review Committee.
I'm sorry, yes, I did. Okay, so we'll move on to number 3, which would be the proposed amendment to the Design Review Committee, and Sarah Gross will be giving us an update.
And I believe Jerry's going to share a screen. I just got a quick presentation to talk through what we're proposing here. All right, if you'll go to the
Yeah. Wait.
oh,
It's not taking. Let me click out because it did not accept it for some reason.
here we go.
Okay. Okay, we're there.
Perfect. Like you can see me in there twice. Anyway. All right, so some key takeaways on what we're talking about today. This is a request to update or clarify the membership language in the Design Review Committee. Jerry, if you'll go to the next slide for key takeaways. And I'll note here, I'll note here that there was some concern from the Design Review Committee about what this would do to membership as far as continuity and experience, and we'll talk through that in this presentation. But if adopted by City Council, we in the Clerk's Office would monitor membership to address that concern and offset that concern. So that's just key takeaways. If we can go into the next slide, which is background. Just some background with the DRC. It was established in 2021. And at that time, it was established to have 4 members from the Downtown Commission, as well as 4 members from the Asheville Buncombe Riverfront Commission, and 1 at-large member to be appointed by the committee. And so a year later, that was revised. It was amended to, and it currently stands to have 3 members that are on the Downtown Commission, 3 members on the Asheville Buncombe Riverfront Commission, and then 3 at-large members that are now appointed by City Council as well. So with this new software, as we're all aware of, it has come to our attention that as we're looking at terms and memberships as it relates to the Design Review Committee and to those seats from Downtown Commission, they're not lining up. And so we are proposing this amendment to make them concurrent, to tie them together essentially. And that's for us in the clerk's office to help us to better track terms and membership. So Jared, if you'll go to that next slide. So this is what we'd be proposing to add. And just to clarify a little bit further, again, it's tying the term of the Downtown Commission or Riverfront Commission to their term on the Design Review Committee. So let's say if you are the Downtown Commission representative and you are selected by the Downtown Commission to serve on the DRC, when your term is up on the Downtown Commission, your term on DRC would also be up. And again, that will help us to track the memberships. And it would also help us to avoid the possible scenario that the membership of the Downtown Review Committee be mostly made up of non-Downtown Committee or non-Riverfront committees, which we as staff, we believe that the intent of the establishing ordinances was to have that direct linkage of membership to the Design Review Committee. So if we can go to the next slide. Committee review, this did go to Design Review Committee twice. And as you can see, there was a unanimous negative recommendation. They did not vote for this with the major concern, as I stated, the concern that the possibility reducing the continuity and experience of the membership, which we do believe in the clerk's office and working with the two committees that we can mitigate this issue just by being forward thinking. And then also this went to the Planning and Zoning Commission because this would be a text amendment to the UDO in which the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously supported as drafted by staff. And with that, if we can go, there's a suggested motion, but I will do my best to answer any questions you might have.
The only thing, Sarah, I would like to ask, when you go back to why the design, I guess it DT, the DT
Design Review Committee.
Yeah, actually, and you were saying that they were voted against it completely. I know you gave us one reason. Is there any other?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Go back to the next slide. The slide you just went to previously.
With the committee review.
Okay. Okay. Design unanimous negative recommendation, right? And I know you said they were concerned about possibly reducing the continuity of experience. So did they go into any more, about what exactly, how that impact the committee?
So as proposed, what we are proposing is that their term on the DRC would be directly connected to their term on the Downtown Commission. So say, for example, if you're on the Downtown Commission for 2 years and then we're selected to be the representative, one of the 3 representatives on downtown on the DRC, sorry, so many acronyms, then your term on the DRC could be shorter because you only have 1 year left of your complete term.
Yes.
Right. So that's where I appreciate that they've recommended not to do it because you want folks who are experienced in our boards and commissions process, but by the time you gain experience, you might also be rolling off.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you have folks who are willing and able to do 2 terms, then you have a little bit more leeway. But I understand their concern. And I would parallel that with an additional concern is if we have folks on the Design Review Committee that aren't also liaisons to other boards, then they'll be completely outside of the process. And it keeps us from having that sticky connectivity throughout our decision-making. So while I do really hear their concern about losing some institutional process memory, I think that we can, it almost seems that we should try to do it this way so that we don't lose that other part of the process continuity, which is for the whole picture.
And I can understand what you're saying, Kim, and that's what's my concern too. I sort of feel that, and not being able to control how many, the three, different categories, how many do we lose? But right now, Maggie has a great.
I also think that they were concerned that they might have all at-large members on that board. But here again, in the clerk's office, we monitor those seat appointments very closely, and we would not. I can 99% say we would not let that go to an at-large. We would hassle them until they gave us their member on that particular board.
So here's the curiosity that I had about this change is if we leave it more on the flexible end, let's say that you have somebody who's, oh gosh, I'm trying to think make sure I get this right, who's on downtown commission and they're going to be on design review. And they've rolled off of downtown commission, but they're staying on design review while downtown commission skills up and finds the right person, then that lag time might not be so long. And then the person on the design review could roll off when they were ready. It would just give us a little bit more flexibility. Instead, if we make this change today, then technically you should drop the person off of design review because they were no longer in downtown commission, and then you have bigger gaps. It could be creating a different problem by us not having flexibility.
Well, what we would do is we would let that person remain on that committee until the downtown commission reappointed the new person.
Yeah,
We wouldn't drop them as soon as their term ended.
So in this case, it gives us the flexibility of keeping downtown review
on
with a quorum, being able to have meetings, which is important, while also creating the demand for the new seat so that you can advertise.
okay.
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you for that clarification. I think that's very important.
that makes sense now. Because I was a little confused too, but now that doesn't make sense. If they're able to stay on until they replace them there, okay, got it. Okay. So that being said, is anyone interested in making a motion?
I can move to recommend that these amendments be approved and sent to the full council.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Councilwoman Moultrie,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lloyd,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So the motion passes. We moved on to the full council.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a couple for informal discussions updates. Want to note that we do not have May appointments, so I propose canceling the May meeting. If so, that next meeting would be June 11th. Any concerns with canceling the May meeting?
Does anyone have any comments? Okay, that's fine.
And then the last thing I wanted to note is that this is Jerry's last meeting with us. I just want to say a huge thanks. She really kept us in line with all these appointments. So thank you, Jerry.
It's been my pleasure to support the efforts.
Gary, you've really helped us on a lot of the back end infrastructure, the stuff that people don't see. And so I just wanted to name that. You've made our systems and our processes work better. You've been a great asset in liaisoning relationships and communications with the public, with interested advisory board members, with current advisory board members. And you've also greeted people during times of celebration and times of struggle in City Hall before council meetings. And I see the way that you interact, and you've just been such a pleasure to work with. And I wish you great success in your next role in our community.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I happen to know those at your next role are so tremendously excited. I was having a meeting with one and they were laughing in my face. So.
Okay. You'll have to tell me who. No, thank you. I appreciate it. We will keep the communications between the city and the Red Cross going, and I think we can collaborate on quite a few things to strengthen our community.
Yeah. So we'll still see you around, Jerry.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be speaking at council meetings.
Yeah. Okay. Well, congratulations.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. That is it for clerk's updates.
Okay, so it's this time we'll move on to public comment. Sarah, do you have anyone?
We do not have any callers in the queue right now.
With that being said, anyone would like to make any comments before we adjourn? Okay. See you all in Ellen. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.